Hey everyone, I'm 17-year-old writer Noah Barfield, author of that absolutely amazing action fantasy novel Legendland, and welcome to Writer's Corner. I'm very glad to have you today. Anyway, this week in Writer's Corner, I would like to talk about the importance of research, because research is just so very important. I cannot stress to you enough how important research is. Okay? I'm going to try and remain calm through this, because just thinking about whenever people don't research properly tends to get me aggravated. But to put it in perspective, in my opinion, of the various different writing processes, whatever, the various different writing processes, the top three, in my opinion, go as follows. Number one, the act of writing itself, because you're a writer, so that's really important for your career. Research is number two. And number three is editing. And I only put research before editing because without research, you're never going to get to the editing stage. I'm sorry to say it. Because I don't care how long you've been writing for. If you're just starting, if you have a couple stories, maybe even a novel under your belt, if you don't know what you're talking about and it comes across in your writing, it will seem like an amateur thing and you will get flagged for it. I'm sorry. I don't want to be harsh. I don't. And I know a lot of writers do a lot of research. I'm just pointing out that you need to follow in their good example. Teen writers, even before you're a teenager, adults, whatever. Make sure you do research on whatever you're writing. Now, that doesn't exactly mean that you have to, know enough to write an essay on it. That is not what I'm saying. I mean, know your audience, people, okay? If you're writing a science fiction novel and you know that your audience probably will not want to read about the different specifications and scientific probability of this warp drive. Like, if it was real, all of the specific specifications and all of that. If you know your audience doesn't want to read that, then you don't really need to research it to where you could write an essay on it. Maybe research it a little bit, and then make the rest up so it sounds plausible. Like, yeah, because of the special particle and the energy that's developed by this traveling at this speed and gravity, you can go from this planet to this one. Yay! As long as it sounds plausible within, like, that set of circumstances, then you're good. And same thing with magic. Like, magic, you can basically do whatever you want. That's why I like to write fantasy. I can do whatever I want. But that brings me to a big point, specifically for high fantasy. And this is applicable to many things, not just sword fighting. That's right, sword fighting. Okay, so if you are writing high fantasy and your characters use weapons that you commonly wouldn't use yourself, like, okay, say they're fighting with a flail. If you have no idea how heavy a flail was, like the average one back in the olden times, and if you have no idea how it works, or how you would successfully go about flinging it around so that you don't crack your own skull open and then the other person automatically wins, then you should probably do some research. While I was writing Legendland, and even a little bit before, I think, I took fencing. Well, for one, swords are cool. So, but also because in addition to doing martial arts, I felt that it was necessary to have that kind of knowledge under my belt so that I could write about actual sword fighting. Now, I didn't write about fencing most of the time, but I felt that the stuff that I knew was a little more applicable. And I would also, because I used to have like plastic lightsabers and foam swords and all of that, I would practice what I did with my brothers or some other willing volunteer to make sure that it actually would work. Same thing with hand-to-hand combat. Now, this is applicable to other areas in terms of research, because if it is a main focus throughout the book, or even if it's just there on a constant basis, sword fighting to me is not a huge part of what Legendland is. It's not like, oh my god, Legendland is anthropomorphic animals even though there's only a couple. And if it's sword fighting, because that's the weapons they have. And, like, that's not it. Sword fighting is just, that's how people fight. Those are the weapons that people use. If in Legend Land people use guns, I would, for one, go shooting more than I do, and two, I would research guns more, because I don't know how to take one apart, I don't know how to clean one, none of that stuff that I would probably need to know, just because you don't realize how much you know about a subject until you start writing it, and the same is true, but in the opposite. You don't know how little you know until you try and write it. And I highly suggest having someone who knows what it's about, like having someone who has done sword fighting or maybe Renaissance reenactments or something like that. Have them look over it, because they have to be historically accurate. And that historical accuracy is going to transfer over into sword fighting, because sword fighting was used in ye olden times, so there's some knowledge there that can carry over. Now, how much research do you need to do? I mean, that's a question that I used to ask, and eventually I just figured out the answer for myself, and also then people concluded the same thing as me. It depends. If it's a big thing, or if it's a central, or if it's a constant throughout your books, swords, or or maybe it's lasers, I don't know, then you need to do more research about it, so that you maybe could write an essay on it if you really needed to, or at least bore someone. If you know enough about a subject to bore someone with it, you know enough. Now, if it's not a central theme, or is not constant, you're probably safe with maybe looking at the Wikipedia article. Now, I'm not saying, nor am I saying, that Wikipedia is a veritable source of information for research. That's your call. But that is just a perspective of the bare minimum required, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean you have to research everything. I mean, like, you know how to run, or at least most people do. So, you know how to run. You don't need to research that, unless maybe you have a character who has super speed, so you really need to get into specifics of leg muscles and all of that. I just want to stress the importance of research, and of proper research. I prefer to talk to people I know or have experience in certain matters before I consult the all-knowing internet, because as much of a wealth of knowledge and information that the internet is, it is also a treasure trove of disinformation and deceit. So, I like to talk to people I know before I consult it. Say your character is going through a rough patch and is homeless, and you yourself have never been homeless, but know someone who maybe ran away and had to be on their own for a bit whenever they were younger, or maybe was actually, someone who at a point in their life was homeless. Consult them in the most respectful way possible, because they will relay it, and it will be more personal, have an impression upon you. Because of that, it will be more personal for your readers, because if you're feeling it while you're writing, your readers will feel it while they're reading it. And that same thing with emotions, which I don't know if I've covered that yet in various other videos, but I probably will eventually if I haven't. Anyway, research, incredibly important. I prefer to consult people around me, and even if you haven't watched the video up until now, even if you stopped 3 minutes in, I am okay with that, because you at least got the message that research is incredibly important, and that if you don't know a little about it, then at least do enough research so if someone asks you about it, you could explain it to them and give them a basic idea. That's my opinion. Now, whatever you do is up to you, but I would prefer if, for one, you did research, and two, if you didn't forget to subscribe, because that would just be awesome. Also, you can contact me. Let me know what you think about research, if it's a boring part of writing, or if it's really fun. You can contact me at www.arc-storm.com, or just leave a comment below. Now, as always, thank you for watching, and continue to enjoy.